So one of the things I emphasize now is story,
Mm-hmm.
and focusing on helping people find their own story, and there's reasons why they need to. And then also in businesses, the stories that you use to really engage with a client. My story, one of the things that a really awesome consultant got me to do, only took him 2.5 months to force me into it, was my own origin story.
Uh-huh.
And that was when I sort of discovered, oh, so this is why I'm the way I am.
Hello and welcome to Chaos to Clarity, the podcast that's your compass to navigate the exciting world of service-based businesses. If you're a determined woman in your current business adventure, striving to conquer the chaos and build your empire, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Maggie, your go-to business bestie and chaos navigator. I've spent nearly 2 decades in the service-based industry, building a photography business, a yoga studio, and now a thriving coaching practice. I've cracked the code to consistent income without all the chaos and noise. So get ready to increase your business growth, connect with your ideal clients, and find ease in both business and in life. It's time to turn your frustrations into inspiration and your chaos into clarity. So go ahead and grab your coffee, a pen and paper, and let's dive into the journey of building your dream service-based business together. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I am so excited today. I have the Paul Puckett on with me today. So Paul, if you could tell us who you are, who you serve, and how long you've been in business.
My name is Chaos, and I'm half of her podcast title. She's Clarity, so she'll clarify anything I say. No, I'm Paul Puckett. I live in Florida, and started out my career actually with degrees in music that I ended up not using. Dropped out of seminary, didn't use it, and ended up falling into financial services for 35 years. All of which time I use what I'm currently doing, but not as a business. And so, worked for some major banks, an investment advisor, private banker, trust officer, insurance agent, all the financial stuff. But that really wasn't me. So
Mhm.
I think that happens to a lot of us.
Yeah, yes, I can totally attest to that. When I worked in corporate, I worked in corporate for about 8 years, and it got to the point where I knew I couldn't show up to that world anymore. I don't want to say above it, but I had outgrown that world. So, knowing that and then taking that leap of faith to send the email to my boss, my boss's boss, and the HR manager to say, I need to speak with you three right now, like in the next 20 minutes, to have them come into a conference room and go, why are we in here? What do
Right.
you, what do you want? Why are you emailing all of us? Like I was kind of less than. And, I
But
stood
they
in
but
front,
they came.
right? They came, they showed up.
Yeah.
Probably because they knew something was about to happen, right? Like, so they all came in, they sat down, I stood up and I took a big breath and I said, I quit. And, and it was the end of December. My boss looked at me. His face got real white. His jaw dropped. And he said, You what? What now? What did you say? And his boss, the manager of all of us, said, Well, she's quitting. She's probably going to go do her photography thing. She's amazing at it. And I was like, Wow. Yeah, I am actually. And, my boss's boss started clapping for me. And he's like, I am so proud of you. And I was like, Oh my gosh. Wow. Really? Of me? Okay, cool, right? And then the HR manager was like, ugh, now I have all this paperwork to do right before
That's exactly
Christmas.
what I thought she'd say. Yep.
And I was like,
Thanks.
ah,
You call me to a meeting, and now I have paperwork.
right? Yeah. So, like I totally get that. Crazy. So my first question for you or actually my second, I guess, is what is something challenging you have overcome in your business or in your
Wow.
time as a
Well,
person?
knowing that your
Yeah.
primary target market is women,
Yeah.
the only surprise they will have is that I'm admitting it and I do not appear to be female. Um, the problem with that question is how many times did I have to overcome something?
Yeah.
Um, I guess I'll start with the obvious. When I fell into financial services, it was never anything I intended to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was hired, I started at Mass Mutual when it comes to financial services way back in 87. And when I was hired by Sovereign Bank, a predecessor of Bank America and Nations Bank for the management associate program, um, we're done. They've offered me the job. And the HR person said, "Congratulations, Paul. May I ask, I should have asked during the interview process, why does a guy with a master's in mechanical engineering want to be working for a bank?" And I said, "I have absolutely no idea. And MME is a master's in music education." Am I fired yet? So the first challenge I had to overcome was being a music major with literally no financial background, but going
Mm-hmm.
through the training, they put us through a mini business program. And funny enough, that challenge was more than overcome because I can tell you, whether it was attorneys, accountants, or fellow employees or bosses, what everyone dreaded was if I began a sentence with, "as a music major," because what that told the MBA, CFA, whatever it was that was sitting in front of me is, what you just said isn't correct.
Uh-huh.
I know it's not correct. And I'm
Right.
a music major.
Right.
What's going on? But I was never really a fit, but I had a lot of fun. I was very successful
Mm-hmm.
uh, in banking. But there were lots of challenges for me to overcome just because of the way I fell into it.
Right. Right. Well, and I think that's important to really showcase that, like, you can be something that you really don't realize you can be. Like I have a degree in Spanish, right? Like I majored in Spanish because when I was in school, I lived in Spain for 6 months. When I was over there, I took the little tiny camera, right? That had a window this big on the back, and I just took thousands of photos. I was over there. I took one specific photo, and I called my mom later that day and I said, I am going to start a photography business. And she was like, how about you finish college and start a photography business? So I went to work and I was like, okay, how can I graduate soon and continue this dream? And also at the time I had been working in that corporate job as an intern. So it's like, okay, they have a position for me. I can start this business and do all of it. So, I think, when you talk about all of the challenges you're overcoming, I think it's really important to look back at some of those and give yourself a pat on the back for, for
Absolutely.
doing it. I think a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit, yeah, for overcoming all of the challenges, right? I know I could be here all day talking about challenges with you. Any of the interviews that I've done, really, I ask this question and everyone has to pause and think. And then a lot of people ask the same one. Well, which challenge, and really it's just anything that stands out to you. And I think it's important to talk about that stuff.
Oh, I do too. Although I had to chuckle for those of you in the audience who were in my century, when she said the little window on the back of the camera, she doesn't know something, I don't think. I was a photographer. That's probably one of the things I should have done. When I started out, I had a Minolta SRT 201 that I mowed lawns to afford to buy.
Uh-huh.
And then I used that camera to make money to buy a Mamiya RB 267 960. Anyway, this was in the day where there was no window on the back of the camera.
Yes. Well, I have this I have a Canon AE1. So I do
Yep,
use
very
this.
similar to very
Yep.
similar to the 201.
So I
No,
do use this, and it does have a little window, but not to be able to see the photos. So yes, I do know what you're talking about. I did start photography on a camera like that.
I used to do my own black and white darkroom. So
Yes. Yeah. So that was the one class in college that I took about photography, was learning to develop in the darkroom. And it was a black and white photography class. And it was my favorite class that I took in college. In 4 years of college, that was the most fun I had.
cool.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us one piece of advice that you would tell your younger self. So could be business, could be personal, anything that you feel relevant.
Well, knowing that this podcast is only 6 hours long, I think that's a really good question. Because I've thought about that many times and different points I could go back to. So one of the things I emphasize now is story. And focusing on helping people find their own story, and there's reasons why they need to. And then also in businesses, the stories that you use to really engage with a client. My story, one of the things that a really awesome consultant got me to do, only took him 2.5 months to force me into it, was my own origin story. And that was when I sort of discovered, oh, so this is why I'm the way I am, and this is why I don't fit, and all this type of stuff. And so to answer your question, if I could, I would be too young to understand, but I'd love to go back to me when I was 5 and say, listen, a big event's about to happen. It's going to have a massive impact on your life. You're going to figure it out when you're in your 50s, and finally show you figured it out in your early 60s. I'm not sure what it would be I could say though to me at 5. And that's why I've debated a long time. When could I go back and go,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think that's really cool.
But what I would be telling myself, to answer your question, what I would tell myself is this big event's going to happen, and there's going to be reaction to that event and pressure put on you to go a direction you aren't. Rebel.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I think that's so important. Right. No,
I never did. I mean, I got grounded for my first rock and roll album, and all my friends agreed I should have been grounded.
Yeah.
You've probably heard the rock star who is still around today. I write the songs, Barry Manilow.
Oh.
In my family, that was rock and roll.
Wow. Oh, wow. That is, I love that. I love that piece of advice though. I mean, and even for people who are just stepping into their business, and I think that, hearing some of these pieces of advice, my hope is that the people who are listening will take these in and know that it's okay to rebel. It's okay to be a rebel and do things your own way, right? Like, even if you're in your late 50s, early 60s, even if you're in your 70s or 80s, right? Like, I know people who are alive, right? Like, there are people that run the gamut of age range who are just starting or have started but kind of stopped, and then they're restarting, and they're finding this fire inside of them that's like, oh, but I'm not sure I can do it that way, right? Like, even to just say, yeah, you can step into that rebel and like let that inner rebel run wild. And I think especially that's important today, right? Like, when you talk about story and finding your story and discovering your origin story, that is really going to help you stand out among the crowd, right? Because there have been so many cookie cutter, at least coaches, right? Up until I would say the last year or so, right? Now people are starting to step out of the mold, and how do I stand out in a crowd so that people will see me or you or, whoever it is? How do I stand out among the crowd?
And that's one of the big benefits of story. But the first benefits of knowing your origin are really your own benefits. Self-awareness. You understand why you are the way you are, what you do. You rediscover what your values and beliefs are. Yours, not the ones you were taught. But it does improve relationships with other people. It does, because so few people do it. you automatically stand out because you do it.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that's awesome. All right. So my last question of the day is, if you were a kitchen utensil or gadget, what would you be and why?
I cook. So this I'd probably say I'd be an espresso machine because it's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Um, I'd be a Bialetti coffee pot.
Okay.
I think I would go with the basics. I think I would be a fork or a knife because they work and they can be used for a wide variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
properly used, it's a tool. I mean,
Right.
a typical kitchen knife is also a screwdriver.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Right.
murder weapon. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, kitchen tool. Although wooden spoon is tempting,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd go with the with fork or knife.
Okay. Okay. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. So I will link all of your important links below in the show notes, but go ahead and tell everyone how they can connect with you.
Just launched Story Centered Marketing at storycenteredmarketing.com. You'll have the pleasure or an excuse not to eat that evening of me on video explaining exactly what it is and how it works. And that site will be rolling out. In essence, what I provide for closely held businesses, size doesn't matter, but I don't really want to, work with a board of directors. Um, is guidance in them finding their own personal story and then their business story. And the thing about business, even if you're a coach, which by the way, the key to all of this happening, and one of the first things I talk about real quickly, if you go back and look at the hero's journey, which I was fascinated with from like age 5 on, from Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. I was born after he wrote that. At any rate, the steps in that journey, normal life, a calling, denial of that call. Okay. A mentor arrives. And that it's sort of like when the student is ready, the teacher will come, is true for me. When I finally was ready, I found the right mentor, and that's what resulted in launching all of this. But what in essence I do is work with companies to increase their sales and client engagement by incorporating the power of story into their marketing. And the interesting thing is when they suddenly go and everything lights up because they're thinking, how many stories are there? I mean, my story, the business story, I'm done. No, you've got your customer story. That's the biggest, most important one for your target market and how you identify with it. You have a product, a service. There's stories behind that. There's stories about why you have the location you have or chose to be online. I mean, there's stories everywhere. And the reason they work, I didn't create anything. There's plenty of people that understand the importance of story. But the reason it works is because if you go way, way back, like just 150 years, 200 years, there was no news. There was no entertainment. And the reason why bards, the original storytellers, were so important is because they went village to village, they shared news, they did all these things. And so we're programmed for story. And in a year, we can ask Maggie, after a year, with the Chaos to Clarity podcast. I got that right?
Yep.
I love it when I get it together. You'll go back to that show where Chaos was her guest, and you can say, so after a year, what's the story?
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. And I think you're right. Story is what drives us forward. When you think about those clickbait things that you click on Facebook, where it's like 1,000 ways to do whatever this thing is, right? Why do you click on it? Because there's some clickbait. You want to know the story behind it. And 2 years ago, when I started navigating into the coaching space, a guy that I graduated high school with sent me a Facebook message, and he's like, hey, I need some coaching and this is what I want to do. Okay. And we got on Zoom together, talked through all of the stuff. And at the end of the Zoom, he was starting a coffee company. And he was like, so I asked him like, well, what is some of the story behind this? And he was like, funny you asked that. what defines a good cup of coffee to you, is what he asked me. And I was like, he's like, what do you feel? And I was like, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I feel good when I drink it. Gives me energy. He's like, no. Like, does it bring joy? Does it bring passion? Are you with other people? And I was like, dude, I love that. And that has really stuck with me in my coaching journey, right? That what defines a good cup of coffee, right? Like, for me, it's, having a cup of coffee and having a conversation with someone. Doesn't matter. I like good coffee, but if the coffee's crap, it doesn't really matter. It's more about the connection that I feel to others. So I think that's really important, even as you're moving through this.
Yeah, the only disagreement I would have with you, and just so you know, I can't take a picture of it from here, but hanging right over there is one of the original Starbucks artworks, posters. This was more art back in the day. And it's a bunch of brown and golds, and it only has 3 words on it: coffee, books, conversation. Now, in full disclosure, for any of my friends or people that know me watching this, she's talking about somebody other than me who opened with, what does a cup of coffee do for you? Or however he asked it.
Yep.
And he's a kindred spirit out there in the world. So I appreciate you sharing that story.
Yes, that is awesome. All right. Well, Paul, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I am so excited for everyone to have this connection with you and to be able to connect with you and take part in what you are offering to them.
Always nice to have someone else along on the journey. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Wow. What a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview. And I hope you have the best day ever.